Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper, an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! And today's project that I have for you is a card holder. I call it a pocket card holder, and it is made very simply using a piece of designer series paper. This is an idea that I saw from Karen Titus of Stampin' on the Back Porch many years ago, and I decided to break this out. It is simply tied shut with a ribbon, although we'll talk about some other options for that later. And then it holds on each side, two cards and envelopes. Now these are smaller than your standard card size. These are the kind that you can get in a packet of 20 or 25 at your local craft store, or you can make your own. Or I'll show you at the end of the video how you can take this idea and make it a little bit larger to hold your standard cards. So we will go ahead and get started, and I'll show you how to make this very simple card holder, which would be a great gift for someone. What you are going to need to start is a piece of designer series paper that is 8 inches wide by 12 inches tall. So you can start with a 12 by 12 and then keep the extra scrap for either embellishment for your cards or another project. But this is 8 inches wide at the top and 12 inches tall. And what helps with this project is to have a piece of designer series paper where you like the print on both sides, because it is going to show. For example, this one, here's the outside, and when I slip the cards out, you can see it on the inside. You also have to be careful with directional paper, because you might not want your paper to be sideways. All over prints are a little easier to handle, but if you have a directional print, to have it come out the right way on the inside, you want it to run vertically. So obviously for the gingham it doesn't really matter, but if you have a print that goes up and down, you're going to want it to run vertically instead of horizontally as you're working on your project. So we've got our piece of 8 by 12 designer series paper. You're going to bring over your paper trimmer scorer and do a little scoring. The first thing we are going to do is, and I'm going to bring this over, I'm trying to remember to bring notes, so if you want to take a screenshot you can. We're going to score on the inside design, so whichever design you want inside your card holder, that's the side of the paper you're going to score on, and we're going to start by scoring at 4 inches on the 8-inch side. So I'm going to slip that in my paper trimmer. And as you're scoring, do it gently. Remember, this is designer series paper. It's thinner than cardstock, and if you press too hard, you're going to tear it. And I don't want to see you do that with such a nice piece of paper. So just gently score. I do up and back. It's just enough that you're going to have that fold line there for later on as we start to put our project together. Now we are going to turn to the 12-inch side of the paper, and we're going to score at 3 1/4 inches in from each end of the paper, so from the right and the left. So 3 1/4, again pressing lightly. I hate it when I'm working on a project and I hear that score blade start to rip through paper. It's not a happy sound. And that is all the cutting and scoring that we need to do for our project. So I'm going to move my paper trimmer out of the way. The next thing you want to do is fold the paper in half on that score line. This kind of gives you a nice visual for finishing the rest of it. And then fold in your right and left panels. Doesn't matter which one goes first, just you're creasing the paper. Now, to form our pocket, the next thing we're going to do is fold each of our corners in just to the score line. My personal recommendation is fold the paper down just to the outside of the score line, and that way you're not going to have extra overlap as you're creating your pocket that's going to add bulk to your project. So you're just going to fold the corners in. Having the score lines here makes it nice and straight and easy to follow. And so I'm just going to do this on all 4 corners. This gingham actually does help me a little bit since it's got nice square edges already. Depending on if your print is a dark print, it might be a little difficult to see. Now, this next step is optional. This is how we're going to form our pocket by folding it in, and you can tell here, can you see how my paper doesn't really want to fold in without some encouragement? So if you choose to, you can grab some adhesive and just tack down these 4 corners that we just folded. Now you could probably do this with a simple glue dot if you like on the corner up here, but basically we just want to tack this down. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time and adhesive on this step. I just have persnickety adhesive that doesn't like to work on camera. Just enough to tack down these 4 corners. All right, there we go. So when you're finished, you will have a piece of paper that looks like this with the 4 corners folded in. Now the next step, we're going to turn the paper like this, and we're going to fold these down, and this creates the pockets for inside the pocket holder. I also go ahead and just fold it. I like to encourage it a little bit to stay closed and to make sure this just lines up nicely. Now, this step is optional as well. If you like, you can tack down your flaps, and I prefer to do that. So just grab a little tear and tape, double-sided tape, and I put one piece here at the top of this flap and give it a press, and then one more on the flap here. And this way, I've just got 2 strips of tape, if they'll cooperate. Peel the backing off, and it's just 2 strips of tape that are going to tack down the center of my pocket. I'm going to tuck this little flap of tape in there, hold down the bottom flap, and just fold down and give it a press. And now I've got my pocket formed. And there we go. So now I'm going to decorate my little cards. And what I am using today is the Pansy Patch stamp set. This is a very beautiful one. Lots of different pieces to the pansies and some great sentiments. So for this card set that I created, I'm actually using 4 different sentiments. This would be a great little gift to give someone with a thank you card, a happy birthday, wishing you a little extra happiness just because you're you, and that's the stamp I'm going to use here in a minute. And then the little things you do make such a big difference. So you have some variety here, and I'm going to pull out my Stampin' Pierce mat because these are photopolymer stamps and I need just a little cushion underneath of them to get a good impression. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring over my small note card, and I'm going to stamp here at the top corner in Blackberry Bliss ink with that sentiment I mentioned, wishing you a little extra happiness just because you're you. Remember, when you're stamping, you don't need to smush your stamp down in the ink pad. You'll get ink everywhere on your fingers, on your stamp, on your block, places you don't want ink. So just tap gently. With photopolymer in particular, you can see through the stamp and you can just see if you've got enough ink on it. If you've got a blank spot, you obviously need to revisit that ink pad a little bit. Little press. Again, don't smush it down, you might smear it. So tap, 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 and then just hold it 1, 2, 3, and then lift off, and you've got a good impression. So I'm going to set that to the side for just a minute, and I'm going to stamp my happy little miniature pansy here on my envelope while I have my ink out. So I'm going to bring over some fresh freesia. This is one of our new in colors that just came out for 2021 to 2023. And if you don't have a demonstrator you're currently working with, I'd love it if you'd either pop over to my website and check out those new ink colors and all the other fun new products that we have, or if you'd like to see a paper catalog, reach out and I'd be happy to send you one. So first thing I'm going to do is stamp the overall background to my little pansy with my fresh freesia ink down here on this bottom corner. Now I'm going to switch to the Blackberry Bliss ink to give it the outline. And since it's photopolymer and a clear block, I can see right through to line it up. There we go. And just for a little accent, I'm going to take the little, looks like a Groucho mustache, I think, the little interior stamp in Fresh Freesia again and just stamp over top. So it's not going to show up profusely, but it just adds a little bit of depth to that stamp. And so that's all the stamping I'm going to do for this particular card. I'm going to close my ink pads up, otherwise I'm sure I'm going to throw something in it. And now I'll show you how to assemble the cards. Now these, you have total freedom with decoration. I recommend though keeping them simple, because the more depth of layers and dimension that you add to these cards, the thicker your card pocket is going to be. I actually created these cards and I popped this piece here on dimensionals, and I wish I hadn't done that because it just adds a little bulk. But so you can do it if you want, but I kind of recommend gluing everything flat, and I'll show you that in one of the other samples I have for you in just a minute. So I have 2 scraps of designer series paper from the leftover 4-inch scrap from that first piece. So I'm just going to glue these on the card front. There we go. So I'm going to add this strip towards the bottom. These cards are about 3.5 inches wide and a little over 5 inches tall, just to give you a reference point. If you hop over to Facebook at The Faithful Stamper, you will find a supply list posted on June the 11th with all the supplies and dimensions. My adhesive is being very persnickety at the moment. It's very camera shy. So I'm just going to line up this thinner scrap of designer series paper here. Now I have 2 scalloped, actually not 2 scalloped, 1 scalloped, 1 solid circle. These are from our layering circles dies. You have a variety of different sizes. The scalloped circle is polished pink. This is Fresh Freesia, like the ink we used on the envelope. And I'm just going to layer these together. And line them up. And then I die cut 2 of the pansies, 1 small, 1 large, from the designer series paper that coordinates with the pansy patch set. So I'm going to use one of the large ones on the front of the card. I think these purple ones are my favorite. They're just so happy. Now, since I decided, I went ahead and put the other cards together with dimensionals, I'm going to continue to use dimensionals on the back of this, just to keep it consistent. But as I said, I wish I'd have glued them flat. Most cards, I love dimension and layers, but for these, it's just a little easier to keep them flatter. And then I'm going to just pop this right here on the front of the card. And to keep the inside simple, I'm just going to use the smaller one here and glue that on the inside. All right, I've had enough of that adhesive. And you don't want to be here all night watching me glue things. So I'm switching to my favorite, which is my Stampin' Seal Plus. And I'm simply going to put this little flower on the inside for an accent. And there you go. So bring my cards back over. And you can see I have simple note cards. Actually, 2 of those purple pansies. And then I've got that variety of sentiments. So what I'm going to do, let's see here, is just mix and match. I like to put 2 cards together on each side. And just a little tip, I take my envelopes, I put one face down, one face up. And that way, when I go to put them in the pocket, my envelope flap is not hanging up on the edge of my pocket. And another little recommendation is to either fold the whole thing shut, like this, or just hold 1/2 of it up when you put your cards and envelopes in. Giving it something to rest on will ensure that your cards and envelopes don't go past your halfway point. It makes it more difficult to close the packet when you're trying to fight and find that center point. So by just holding up one side or the other, or holding the whole thing shut, you have an easier go of it. And there we go. And you can see I have a little room here, but those cards fit very nicely in. And so the last thing I'm going to do to close this is to take some of our new open weave ribbon. This is polished pink. And I'm just going to wrap the ribbon around, leave myself enough to tie a sweet little bow, and then go ahead and tie it shut. Now, if you want, you can embellish the front of these little packets. You can make it fancier than just a plain bow. You can see why I don't tie bows on camera much. But I kept this one simple, but you could definitely take another one of those layering shapes and pop another pansy and then put that on the front just for decoration and then tie it shut with a ribbon. Or an idea that I just thought of is to make a belly band. Instead of using the ribbon, you could take a piece of cardstock and fold it around here and tape it and create a belly band with a little decoration that you could just slide on and off. Totally up to you, and like I said, an option I didn't even think of till I was on camera. So there we have our sweet little card packet. Now I do have one other of the same size, so this is with the smaller note cards, and this is using our Wildcats suite. So it's designer series paper and a stamp set, which has fantastic detail to it. It has these beautiful tigers, and so these I just stamped my envelopes and kept the cards simple. These are actually all flat, no dimensionals here. 2 on each side, and what I love about the stamp set is you can design either a tiger or a cheetah or a jaguar, whatever you're looking for, with just changing up the accent stamps that you use. And I cannot get over the detail. Look at that tiger face. So just really, really neat. A great idea for masculine cards or kids cards. So there is another sample for you to see, and this one I again just tied shut with a ribbon. Now you might be thinking, well, that's great, but I don't have any of those small note cards and I'm not going to the store, or I don't feel like making my own. So you can actually make a larger size that fits your standard card envelopes. So I want to show these to you side by side. There's not a big difference in the size, but this one fits your, what I call your standard size cards, which are 5.5 inches tall and 4.25 inches wide when they're closed. So to do that, you just need a slightly larger piece of designer series paper, and I wrote down the dimensions for you in case you want to take a screenshot. Instead of 8 by 12, you're going to use a 9 by 12 piece of designer series paper. And then on the 9-inch side of the paper, you're going to score it 4.5, right down the middle. And then on either end, you're going to score at just 3 inches. So very similar, exactly the same thing I did before, just with slight variation on your dimensions and scoring lines. And so I want to show you the key difference on the inside. So this, again, is tied shut with ribbon. And I will show you on the smaller one that we just created, you saw me tack down the centerpiece here. If you are making the larger size, you can't do that because the paper doesn't quite meet in the middle. So obviously if you glued it down, you'd be gluing the whole pocket shut and your cards wouldn't fit in. So you can just leave it as I did, folded, and then it pretty much stays once you have it tied. Or if you wanted to, you could take a piece of designer series paper, say about 1 inch wide perhaps, and just the same width here as the centerpiece, and you could glue it here and then fold it, and that would give you just a little anchor there. And then these are the standard size cards that I created. Kept them very simple with just a strip of the matching designer series paper I had left over and a scalloped rectangle and a stamp. And so again, you can, if you're not going to tack it down, you can actually open this right up and fit your cards in. And the one thing I wanted to point out is your cards barely fit in there. They come right up to the edge. You have a little more room. So just keep that in mind as you're putting this together. in a future video, I'll actually show you a different kind of card holder that you can use for the same idea with these large cards. So I hope you enjoyed getting to make this pocket card folder. I would love it if you would subscribe to my videos and come back weekly to see the videos that I put up on Mondays and Fridays. And I'd love it if you'd hop over and visit me at The Faithful Stamper. I do Facebook Lives twice a week, and you'll see other projects that I'm working on there as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the project. Take care, and happy crafting.